As a kid, did you ever dream of becoming a professional race car driver? But maybe it was too expensive or always seemed out of reach. Here at Racing Prodigy, it is our mission to take those dreams and make them a reality. You too can be just like Jeff Gordon, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, some of the greatest drivers ever, and be a part of a world where real-life racing and motorsport opportunities are available to everyone. That world is now here. Here at Racing Prodigy, we provide real-world racing opportunities to those with grit and skill who may otherwise never be discovered. Thanks to esports competition, a new insight has been found. The skill set of virtual racing transfers to real race cars and tracks. Gamers and sim racers have proven that they can race real race cars against the professionals and win. It's now time for the world's first E2 Real Sports League, taking esports competitors to real-life racing competitions. Prodigy Racing League is here to offer aspiring real-world race car drivers the opportunity to compete across multiple gaming platforms to earn titles and coveted Prodigy passes. These golden tickets of motorsports allow you access to trips that are fully paid for you to train, learn, and even compete at Prodigy Week, our real-world racing academy held at Atlanta Motorsports Park in November. It is our goal and vision to draft the first class of racers from those who compete at Prodigy Week to fill the grid for our inaugural series to debut in 2024. We can only achieve our vision together, so join us today to test your skills, earn your spot at Prodigy Week, and enjoy the thrill of racing. Racing Prodigy, where dreams become a reality.
We are less than 2 months away from Prodigy Week, and today the search continues for the next recipient of a Prodigy Pass. For the very first time, the Prodigy Racing League lands on Race Room, and today at the Hockenheim Ring, we'll find out who comes out on top in 2 semi-finals to set the grid for tomorrow's final activities. Hello everyone, welcome to RaceSpot TV. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be alongside Joey Tebben as we get ourselves underway for 2 exciting and short races. Joey, what a blast that we've had so far. 4 Prodigy passes have already been handed out. 4 sim racers are going to the Atlanta Motorsports Park at the end of October to showcase their talent in a radical and that fantastic facility.
But 4 is not enough. We've got to get a couple more there. We've got to get a full field in here. We've already had Gustavo Ariel from the Toyota GR86 Cup. We had Lawrence Beertons from the karts, Kane Halliburton last week, or about a month ago actually, and David Dalton Jr. joining the fray, but we're going to crown one more here. Formula 4 machinery at the Hockenheim Ring here on Race Room. It's a difficult combination. It's a fast combination with those long straights and those heavy drafting vehicles, and it's going to be just as action-packed as any event ever has been.
And of course, this is a platform that has seen so many drivers try to make that virtual to reality step, and so it's great to see the Prodigy Racing League land up here as well. Of course, it all started with the time attack qualifiers as ever, open to the public and ran for 2 weeks, where the top 40 progressed to today's 2 semi-finals. Of course, tomorrow, the fastest 20 of them will do battle on the Sunday. The winner not just walking away with a Prodigy pass, but as well the Grid by SimLab Porsche 911 RSR Sim Racing steering wheel. Second place does win an Aztec Invicta Sim Racing pedal, brake and throttle to maybe give them some more speed in future PRL tournaments. And third gets one of the brand new SimLab GT1 Pro Sim Racing cockpits as well. One of those things so important to have the stability underneath you as we get ourselves underway. Let's talk about that format though, Joey, because the grids for today's semi-finals ordered by the Time Attack qualifiers.
Indeed it is. So qualifying is always important. That's going to set the grid, but racing is going to be important. Move your way forward through the field here. Make sure you're advancing in the top 10. Right now we've got 18 cars in the field for this split. Only the top 10 move on.
Correct myself. I didn't mean qualifying grid. I mean car numbers were initially ordered by the Time Attack qualifiers, and we'll talk you through those rankings very quickly. They're out there for qualifying right now. This is the section of track where I think we're going to be talking most about, Joey. The long run into the, let's say, best passing opportunity, but also the most opportunity for chaos.
Yeah, it's a great passing opportunity. It's also a very dangerous passing opportunity, especially on lap 1 with how tight it is in every type of car you take to this track. When you turn into that hairpin, it's almost hand over hand. So you're trying to make a turn in a parking garage. It's so difficult. And then you instantly have to be back on the throttle here for a little bit of a long straight, then a high-speed kink, flat out through there. Then you're back into the heavy braking zone, into this stadium section. There's 2 very long straights at this track. Turn 1's not the best passing opportunity, but there's plenty of places to pass at Hockenheim.
One thing that, speaking with the drivers before, they were saying is you really want to avoid locking those tires, and so we're going to see drivers shifting the brake bias back. It also does mean you can brake potentially a little bit more differently in how you can approach that braking phase into the corner. This is that tricky final sector where even the likes of Sebastian Vettel have shown that you can get things wrong and slide off in what is a slippery section of the track, not just when through these very final section of corners you can find yourself too wide and on to the drag strip. Currently at the very top of the qualifying standings, it's a driver with plenty of F1 esports experience, Michael Romanidis, with a 1:42.998, the only driver to have broken in to the 42s. We'll see if Krippner's going to be able to improve, but jumping up into second now is Jan van der Heide.
And look at how close those times are. 1/10 of a second between the top 3, barely a second separating the entire top 16 so far. It's incredibly close. It was incredibly close in the Time Attack between the top 40 drivers who actually advanced to this event in the first place, and it's only going to be just as close in the final 5 minutes of qualifying here. For those of you who were with us in the previous event, Michael Romanidis was actually very successful. Could have been the driver who got that Prodigy pass, was very aggressive, didn't work out for him though, had an incident, ended up at the back of the field. He's here for try number 2. Max Pfeiffer, not here with us in that last event though. He's trying to go 1 for 1 in Prodigy events.
I think Romanidis has been around for now 3 of our Prodigy Racing League semi-finals. Of course, was part of both the iRacing competitions. We had a slightly different community joining us for the SK Racing X30 Miami Cup. And of course, Lawrence Bertens was the Prodigy Pass winner there. And we saw some of those competitors as well in the Prodigy Search Selection Show just a week or so ago, because that's where David Dalton Jr. got his chance to head to Atlanta Motorsports Park. The top 500 in the Time Attack qualifiers, Joey, are invited to submit a video application, a resume, if you will, about why they deserve to be a Prodigy Pass recipient. And our judges, who last time were Arava, sim racing influencer, and Linus Lundqvist, now a NTT IndyCar Series drivers, sift through those applications to find the one that receives a Prodigy Pass.
They're pretty good people with an eye for talent. If they're picking you, you know you've done a pretty good job, but you might think it's a battle of racing drivers to get a real-life racing seat. Why isn't it just all about speed? Well, I think everybody knows that racing in the real world, making a career out of racing, is not just about being fast. It's about being marketable. It's about knowing how to talk to people. It's about doing business. So having to do a little bit of networking, a little bit of business, a little bit of a job application of sorts with that video application. It's another important part of making a career in racing if you want to do that from the sim to real pipeline.
Absolutely, and as you see a couple more drivers head to the line and instantly reset back to the start of another flying attempt. Van der Heide has been pipped from second by Lucas Muller. I saw Moritz Lohner, former team manager, former, I guess, founder of Door Esports, jumping in to support some of his counterparts. The one thing that I do look at, seeing a lot of these names, aren't just repeat drivers from previous Prodigy Racing League tournaments, Joey, but I'm also seeing some of the very best on Race Room here today, which is really interesting to see the mix that you have of the returning faces and Race Room's finest.
And it tells you that across every simulator, the best drivers are still going to rise to the top. Whether it's Von der Heyde, who's been successful in iRacing and R-Factor in Race Room, he's rising to the top. Romanitas is rising to the top in the second sim in 2 tournaments so far. Lucas Muller as well. A fast driver's a fast driver, whether they're in iRacing, whether they're in Race Room, or for that matter, whether they're in sim racing or whether they're in real life.
We still got 3 odd minutes left to go in this session. As you see, Lucas Muller in the orange Tatuus F4 head to the line. Does not find himself an improvement, and he is only the second driver to have ducked down into that 142 bracket. Joey mentioned about a 1/10 of a second splitting the top 5, but looking down all the way to 18th position, only 1.4 seconds through the field in a car that has a lot of draft, and so that's going to mean plenty of passing opportunities, but qualifying still going to be important as Romanitas heads through the first corner, bumpy on the outside, and sets himself up for another flyer.
And putting yourself up front is going to be very important, but in these cars, at a track like this, where on lap 1, everybody's going to be very close coming into the hairpin. You see Ivan Drovasekov driving through right now. You honestly might want to be 2nd or 3rd coming into lap 1, coming onto that back straight for the first time, because you're going to get the full effect of the draft. These cars are comparatively not very fast compared to some other open wheelers. They've got fairly big wings for the power to weight ratio. They get huge drafts, so you can get huge runs into that hairpin. So if I'm Muller, Von der Heyde, or even Drovasekov right now, I'm not too unhappy with not being on pole, because I know I'm going to get that draft on lap 1, and I know I'm probably going to make a dive on lap 1.
I think the other thing to remember is top 10 from today's semi-finals advance to tomorrow's final. So there is a little bit of importance just getting yourself into a comfortable spot in the top 10, but with the type of racing that we're going to expect, if we don't see a breakaway, drivers maybe 6th on back are going to find themselves under a bit of pressure. Out of the final corner comes the Swiss driver, 5th gear and rising, and pumps himself up into 4th, and a pretty impressive time with the pressure now starting to mount. Final attempt surely starting to drop.
Have only about 50 seconds left on the clock, so if you've started your lap now, you can finish it, but if you haven't, you're all out of luck. Michael Romanitas coming through the final sector here. So high speed, so high commitment. You go that little bit too wide, you end up off track and getting your lap disallowed. But Romanitas is going to come across the line here. Can he improve on his best? No, he cannot. 2/10 off.
Lucas Muller also runs the line, another driver with no improvement, and yes, qualifying still underway, the session not officially in the books, but here's a provisional look at the order as they run, and you can see it's 1.5 seconds that splits first from 18th spot, but crucially in that bubble, 6th on through 15th or so. It's only about 0.6 of a second that splits Leonard Krippner from Ewan Baker, and so I think we are going to see plenty of fighting. 2 drivers into the 142s, Romanitas and Muller, with a bit of a statement, Joey, to start off today's tournament.
And we did all that talk about how qualifying doesn't necessarily matter. Well, qualifying does matter for your confidence. You want to be the driver who's up front, and you want to give yourself a very big buffer, because if you are 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, likely the only thing that's going to take you out of that top 10 is getting into an incident, is getting turned around. We got to start thinking about people like Matt Caruana down in 8th, though. Basically everybody from him down to 18th, they're on the bubble. That's where a huge, huge battle's going to be going on.
Well, that is qualifying done and dusted, and Michael Romanitas has grabbed pole position. Exactly what he would have wanted to do. Came into this tournament as the #1 seed, the fastest in those time attack qualifiers. They are seeded in odds and evens, so 1, 3, 5, 7, and continuing are in this first semi-final. 2, 4, 6, and continuing are in the second semi-final, and so that's now set our qualifying grid. Quick thanks before we continue to roll on to all of those that make this Prodigy Racing League possible, of course, starting with our great friends at SimLab and Grid Engineering, who help provide some of the physical hardware for the drivers who will be winning. Of course, today's winner, not just receiving a Prodigy pass, but that Grid by SimLab Porsche 911 RSR officially licensed steering wheel, and of course Aztec SimSport, who have provided so much in terms of their wheelbases, but also in our Prodigy selection committee. the Invicta quick release adapter to our third place finisher. So thank you to both of them for their support of this virtual to real pipeline. 30 seconds to go, Joey. How are you feeling? How are the drivers feeling right now?
I mean, I'd say we're both feeling pretty equal right now. We're both feeling tense, we're both feeling nervous, and we're both feeling very, very excited to get this race underway. We've had all the time attacks, we've had all the practice, all the qualifying. Everybody does just want to get into racing because they're all racing drivers. They're not qualifying drivers, they're not practice drivers, they're not test drivers, they are racing drivers, and they want to race, and that's where the best action comes from. And I can't wait to see who moves into the top 10. I can't wait to see if we can get 18th to 10th for Michael Ferrans from the back of the field. There's so many possibilities, and I don't think we can even bother predicting because we don't know what's going to happen.
Whether you're watching on RaceBot TV on the Racing Prodigy YouTube channel, where you should jump and subscribe because that's where our Prodigy Search Selection shows get showcased, or on the Race Room channels, we are delighted to have you along for this latest tournament in the Prodigy Racing League. We're ready to hand out what will be an exciting 5th Prodigy Pass, just 50 or so days away from landing at the Atlanta Motorsports Park for Prodigy Week to showcase what sim racers can do in the real world. As mentioned, Michael Romanidis is going to take us away at the very front of the field. I mean, Joey, the drivers sit there, standing start, ready to file in towards turn number 1. What are we going to need to do? Or what are the drivers going to need to do on the start of this race?
They're going to need to keep it clean into turn 1. How many times in the past in races at Hockenheim have we seen people get overly aggressive into turn 1, send it in, make wheel-to-wheel contact, and somebody ends up going flipping into the asphalt runoff? It's all about patience. It's all about waiting for that backstretch. That's the best passing opportunity.
The lights will build, and we are ready to go here on Race Room for the next tournament in the Prodigy Racing League. Formula 4s at Hockenheim are a go. Great drop from the front from Michael Romanidis, but instantly challenges for second as we funnel into the fast right-hander. Tidy start through the field, though, as we work our way into the first actual braking zone. Couple of cars will run their way wide, but Romanidis from Von der Hayden, Muller, Drovasekov, Mrak, and then Krippner dive onto the brakes for the very first time of asking.
Very savvy, very smart from everybody. Clean through turn 1, clean through turn 2, clean through the fast left-hander at turn 3. And now this is where things get intense. Von der Hayden about 4 tenths behind Michael Romanidis. Is that going to be too far to actually go for a dive into the hairpin? I think it is. Didn't get the run out of turn 2 he needed. He's going to need to stay close with him and see if he can go for a shot the next time around. But from 4th on back, that's where the battle's going on. We're about to see a dive into the hairpin from Krippner on Mrak.
And I think you've got to watch out inside of the cutoff line for the top 10. Swap back underneath for Krippner, who's able to swoop on through into 5th spot. Whitford's up to 8th as well. Pfeiffer's dropped a couple down to 9th, and they're really starting to cost each other some time. Cannot afford to lose the draft of those in front into the Mercedes-Benz Arena. A couple of sends to the inside, and now trying to hold on. Mrak trying to get back up underneath of Whitford.
This is exactly what 1 through 4 love to see from Romanidis to Drovasekov. They see 1.1 seconds back to Krippner, and even bigger of a gap back to all of these guys, to Caruana, to Whitford, to Mrak. Those top 4 want to be safe. They don't want to be fighting with these guys. They want to continue pulling away. And all these guys deeper in the field want to move their way forward. They're getting aggressive. It's a trade-off, though, when you lose that much time. And now Mrak, who started a little bit further ahead in the field, he's right on that bubble. He's only got a 2-position buffer.
Remember, we started with a standing start, so maybe tires a little bit cooled down. Gerhard a little bit squirrely through the penultimate corner, loses ground to Nej in 11th spot. And of course, the cutoff line, 10 and above, advance to tomorrow's finals. 1 lap in the books in a 25-minute semi-final. Romanidis, Von der Hayden, Muller, and Drovasekov surely clear of those behind. The question is for Krippner, Caruana, are they going to be able to work together? For some of these drivers further back, how aggressive do they want to be in starting to dice their way on forward?
Mihai Neg, very successful race room driver in his own right, very successful in the Romanian sim racing scene. We don't often talk about that, but it's very active, very popular. Season 1 champion, a rookie in his first season ever, so you know he's got a lot of skills. We do see the perspective of him in his room there. Nicely painted. I like the yellow and blue, and I like the dive into the hairpin on Lofaro. A little bit of contact, though, and turns Pfeiffer around.
Race control's gonna have a lovely view of that one. You can see the hands in the head there from a driver who knows a mistake was made. Pfeiffer's the one that bears the brunt of it and now drops to the very tail end of the field. And surely you'd think that Gerhard's in a pretty good spot. Let's not forget the very first Prodigy Racing League tournament semi-final action came to a close and we thought we had our grid set, but no, race control had to intervene and a driver got promoted in place of another driver getting demoted.
And that's such an easy mistake to make. You want to get aggressive into that hairpin, outbrake whoever's in front of you, and he did successfully do that on Lofaro, but unfortunately there was another car on the apex there of Pfeiffer, and both of the drivers who were initially part of that battle survived, and poor old Max Pfeiffer just sits here thinking, what in the world happened? And I'm very unhappy right now, but he's got to stick with it. He's still only 7 spots out of the top 10. There could very well be more drama and more action that promotes him forward, and he's not giving up. He's still out there.
Krippner is right now the driver that I think will give a bit of confidence to those in the bubble that they have not totally lost the trough. 1.5 off the back of the top 4 that continue to ride in line as they swoop their way once again through this long left-hander into the heavy braking zone that presents so many opportunities. You can also see on the left side some of the movers and shakers and just how some of the drivers have lost out. What do we know, Joey? If you're inside the top 4, you're comfortable. You're probably not going to make too many moves.
Yeah, you're comfortable, but they're racing drivers. They like to make moves. They like to win races, and that's how you get some confidence in the final tomorrow. If you're second here, you know, that's great. You're advancing. You're going to start in the top 4 on the grid, but you're still second. You're not putting the fear into the eyes of the driver in front of you. If you're Van der Heyde and you can pass Romanitas here, the steely focus of both of them on the left, on the right of your screen there, you can put a little bit more fear in them. You could be a bigger challenger tomorrow. Van der Heyde is not happy to fight for second right now. He is happy to wait for a little bit longer with 20 minutes left in the race. Maybe he'll wait till the last couple laps to actually go for a move.
I've just noted as well on our timing screen that there are a couple of drivers, in fact almost half the field, that have popped up as invalid lap times on the last trip around, which I think likely means the extension of track limits, which at a track like this with a lot of tarmac runoff is something that is always bound to be a hot button talking point. Top 4 continue to see the 1.5 second margin to Caruana and Whitvet hold relatively steady. What we are not seeing right now is Lorenz in 12th, close on Gerhard in 11th. Let's not forget that we expect for Nej to be there to be some sort of race control intervention at the end of this race. Gerhard would therefore cycle up into a top 10 transfer spot, and therefore Lorenz is the one, the impetus to start to work on forward.
It's hard to do when you're on your own, especially when you have 2 cars drafting in front of you. They can kind of leapfrog each other and move forward, a little bit like a NASCAR super speedway in a way, moving forward, using each other as help. But a little bit further ahead, Krippner and Caruana, I mentioned that they were losing the draft already in lap 1. They lost the top 4. Well, they're going to fight even more and start to bring in the likes of Whitfoot and Marak and Lofaro as they fight for 5th.
Yep, of course, they can't, like we were talking about with Nej earlier, don't want to get in contact with one another and cost each other penalties, but at the same time, you can already see with the move being made and Caruana now up into 5th, what was once 1.5 seconds is now larger than 2 seconds. This is not Indianapolis. You cannot swap back and forth and close on those in front. No, you have to be a lot more calculating, and Matt Caruana, just like we were saying for Michael Romanitas, a driver that we've seen repeatedly in the Prodigy Racing League, had qualified for the very first iRacing tournament, but ended up not competing. We did see him in the Formula 1600. He's out there and in the top 5 position that he would need to advance to tomorrow. What did we learn, though, in the first 3 Prodigy Racing League tournaments, Joey, in terms of drivers just settling in the top 10? I feel like we learned a lot more from drivers who had to fight their way further back to work on forward.
We learned 2 things. We learned that, first and foremost, you can never give up. You can never think you're out of it, even if you are deeper in the field. You might not be able to pass your way into the top 10, but we've seen many, many incidents, many late race crashes that brought surprise people in. But Mihai Neg here knows he needs track position. If he's going to get a penalty, which he likely will from that dive that took out Max Pfeiffer, he's going to need to move a little bit further forward and maybe hope to put a pad that won't get him removed from the top 10 and just keep racing for as long as he can to hold on to some amount of hope.
In towards that hairpin with what? under 10 minutes burned in this race, and there's still 15 odd minutes to go. These cars can run about 30 minutes on fuel, so there is no such concern there. It's going to be side by side into the chicane and deep, or into the hairpin, deep under the brakes on the outside, and Lofaro is going to be able to hold the spot. And watches Gerhard just sits there, doesn't force the issue, wants to make sure that there's no further drama as the gap in front builds.
Just riding back, saying, you know what, you guys can keep doing this. I've seen you come together once today, and they do it again. Neg and Lofaro come together. Gerhard goes through. Lorenz goes through as well. Not quite yet, but he might. There might be damage on Neg.
Lofaro, I don't know how thrilled they'll be about that. You never want to have to visit the steward's room once in a race, and now Neige is going to have to do it twice in a race. That's going to be slightly awkward and uncomfortable. Gerhard did cycle through Lorenz, not into 10th, but surely into a somewhat decent spot. It's Ewan Baker in 12th that now has, what, about a second or so to close up to 11th to be able to potentially sneak on through into a final spot. All this while, by the way, Kripner, Whitvet and Caruana have not been fighting amongst themselves, Joey. They've understood what they need to do in this middle phase of the race.
Riding in line, still pushing 100%. You can see them just on the limits of the Hockenheim track limits. They're still going 100% here, but they are backing off just a little bit in terms of battling. We know Caruana is very aggressive. We saw him in the iRacing event, the GR86, or in the F1600 at Okayama. One of the most aggressive drivers in the field, drove his way forward, made passes like we've seen from nobody else. But right now we're seeing a different Matt Caruana. We see him at the head of the field. We see Kripner behind him lifting, shaking the tires a little bit, getting some heat in. They're not thinking about racing right now. They're just preserving themselves for those final couple of minutes when the battle will really heat up.
On board with one of the Door Esports contingent in the field, someone that only started sim racing about 3 years ago, has competed in the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual, where they finished in 4th position. ADAC GT Masters Esports Team Champion here on Race Room, competed in the DTM Esports Championship last year, won a trip to the boot camp, competed, got to test in a M2 Cup and an M4 GT4. And one thing that's worrying Joey with all of that experience, you know the other thing he likes to do? Commentate on sim racing. We might be out of a job soon.
Yeah, I did see that. That's worrying for us. We might need a German branch of Race Spot, though. You never know when that could happen. And if that does happen, Leonard Kripner, you're going to be first on the list, buddy. That's not bias at all.
Yeah, he is doing a great job. And like we said, there are so many drivers here with experience in this Race Room platform. I mentioned Lucas Muller as well. He's taken over from Moritz Lohner as the team, I guess, manager for Door Esports. There's so much experience on R-Factor 2, where we go next in the Prodigy Racing League tournaments. That is underway right now, by the way. Head on to racingprodigy.com to learn a bit more. Has competed in F1 Esports Challengers going back before 2020. Said, of course, SRO Esports Race Room, so much success of his own as well. Has competed in iRacing, was in ESLR1 for FaZe earlier this year on Rennsport. Has done some real racing at the Nordschleife as well. Yeah, we've definitely got some very, very stacked competition at the front right now.
I think you may have listed every simulator in the world there. I think we hit every single one.
I didn't say Live for Speed, so that maybe that's too old. Maybe Lucas needed to be born a little bit earlier. He's only 22 years young.
Yeah, you're younger than me. Shocking. We didn't break out the Grand Prix Legends. We know lots of drivers. I mean, there might be some drivers who have experience with that. We've got some folks who were alive in that time. We know that's where sim racing started. Basically, you used to race on your own computer, get your own timing, and compare that with your friends. But those were the dark days before we could actually race against each other, but they still made it work.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how far sim racing has come, and it's always a big slide there for Lorenz on the entry into the stadium section at the end of the lap. Yeah, it's definitely come a long old way. Culp, Lofaro, and Parent all fighting for effectively now 13th spot. Up the inside from Parent on Bradley Culp, who's only been sim racing for about 3 months, been taking it seriously for about 3 weeks. I've got to say, someone who's only been doing it for such a short amount of time, as Culp gets off into that drag strip where it is very, very loose. It's not doing too bad, all things considered.
And he's had a little bit of pressure, a little bit of anxiety over the last 2 days. He didn't actually have a webcam that he needed to participate in this event, so he went on to Amazon, got one shipped overnight. I'm sure fees to get it shipped here on time, but it did arrive. He's in the event, and you can see that he's very, very happy to be in this event for the first time, and the pressure from Max Pfeiffer behind, though, it's about to be very culpable.
Oh, you just had to throw that one, slip that one in there, didn't you?
It had to come eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get a couple more puns out of Joey before the day is done. Yeah, and again, just shows the contrast, right? 3 weeks in serious sim racing versus, I listed the CV effectively for Lucas Muller. Michael Romanidis, he's part of Koana Sims Esport, maybe the biggest team in all of sim racing, and goes back with F1 Esports to their in-person days. So, yeah, this is what the Prodigy Racing League is about, giving drivers the opportunities that maybe they would not have had in the real world, and so we get the experience and the inexperience, both trying to use sim racing at that as the bridge to the next level. Speaking of bridges, by the way, Matt Caruana not going to be the bridge between the lead breakaway and the peloton behind. Krippner's been able to get in front. The gap now between 4th and 5th, a large 3 full seconds.
Unfortunately for the British driver, Matt Caruana, London Bridge has very much fallen down. It's not up anymore. It is 3 seconds. It is growing and growing and growing, and it's a fight for 5th right now, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's a fight for 5th, 6th, and 7th. They've got a little bit of a gap back to Gerhardt with Marak behind as well, so they're not going to be happy. They're going to be starting a little bit deeper in the field in the 10ths, the 12ths, the 14ths tomorrow, but they will most likely be in the field for the final if they don't come into each other, if they don't take each other out, and they've got 10 more minutes to not do that.
Still seeing a few invalid lap times being reported on the timing, which does continue to show that these drivers are pushing as hard as they can, and with the draft being broken, that is why we are seeing maybe the lap time deviation between the 1st and 2nd. Pat Caruana very much under pressure from Whitford as they cycle out of that hairpin once again. You can see Max almost being able to hold on to the tail end of the draft here, and these are all drivers that would feel confident in holding on to top 10 spots. The only issue will be if you, as we've seen on a couple of occasions before today, get involved with drama that sees you spun around.
Yeah, but I would not be surprised if we haven't seen the last incident so far today. I think all these guys are hoping that it doesn't happen to them either, though. Matt Caruana, by the way, only 17 years old. We talk about difference in experience, difference in age for that matter. He's 17. We've got another driver in the field who's, I believe, in the 40s. So you've got generations of drivers. That's what we love about sim racing as a whole. It's not something where you necessarily lose a ton of skill as you get older. You do lose reaction time. You do lose a little bit of the physical ability, but you can compete in sim racing, whether you're 13 years old, like I know some drivers started at about 7, or whether you're 75. I know a guy in sim racing who still races at 75, still competitive. Anybody can do it.
Hey, at RaceBot, we cover a league here for 60+. It is called 60+ Racing Adventures. It is wonderful. The community that you can also find here. I will also just say, you're talking about the diversity in the field that we have. Going to the first of our Prodigy Search Selection shows. 20 drivers, of course, selected from the first 2 Prodigy Racing League tournaments. 3 of those drivers had racing licenses. 5 didn't have driver's licenses. We had 11 different countries. The youngest driver was 14 years old, Davidish Vishkayesh, and then the oldest, 46 years old. There was a big difference, and let's not forget, we have 2 more Prodigy Search Selection shows coming up. One for the previous iRacing tournament. The top 500 will be whittled down to 20, and then from this Race Room tournament, as well as from the next R-Factor tournament, both the top 500 get their chance as well. They'll be combined into the top 20 in effect, and 2 more Prodigy passes will be handed down from there.
Yeah, bad news for fans of Brantley Culp. We saw him battling with Max Pfeiffer a little bit earlier. It appears he's met his demise at the back of the field. He's out of the race. That's our first actual DNF of the night, which is surprising, seeing some of the contact we've had so far. But Brantley Culp is out. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll see him in another event in the future. But hopefully, he enjoyed his first time, and it's just the start of many, many more events in the future for him.
Could still have his chance in the Prodigy Search Selection show. We'll have to wait and see. Clambering over the curb on the exit of turn number 1 once again, Michael Romanidis feeling enough of the pressure to duck back and forth and almost try and break a bit of the draft on the short run in towards turn number 2. Now filtering again through the left, carrying that momentum down. But I think these drivers recognize that there's no value in fighting too much here. And I almost wonder if this is a benefit for the drivers sitting behind. Because going into tomorrow's race, Joey, it's very easy to run by yourself in clean air. You know what's a lot more difficult to do? Run with plenty of dirty air.
Exactly. They're doing a lot of studying, doing a lot of chasing, and we saw some big differences in the final of the previous tournament and the semifinals. We had some absolutely dominant winners who were basically untouchable in the semifinals at Okayama on iRacing. But then once they got into the finals, they actually had to battle with each other. It was a clash of the titans, and they clashed a little bit too hard. And the top drivers from the semifinals were not the top drivers in the finals. So we could see a very similar thing after this event, and we could see some of these guys who have been in fourth doing a lot of studying, doing a lot of being careful. They could be the ones who end up on top at the end of it all. Even Krippner, who's going to start in the top 10 if he stays where he is right now. He might be out of it in this semifinal, but everybody's going to be in it once the final comes around.
And again, just remember, even though top 40 advance to the semifinals, there's only one Prodigy pass up for grabs. There's a look at the driver is heading through that final corner up towards the front. I believe that's, excuse me, this is not the front. This is Leonard Krippner and Matt Caruana, excuse me, who heading through that opening corner now. You can see slightly different backgrounds, but similar setup. They both seem to have triple screens wrapped around them. Let's not forget that hardware does not make the driver. Talent can make up for a lack of hardware, but as my sim rig behind me proves as it gathers dust, Joey, lack of talent cannot make up for all the hardware in the world.
That is very true. How many times have we seen those photos of like Ty Majeski on a laptop in a hotel room with a 10-year-old sim wheel? Anybody can do it. You can be competitive no matter what equipment you have, but these guys have been successful for long enough that they've determined that having the best equipment is kind of what they need to do if they want to further their career in sim racing. But you see the sigh from Matt Caruana there as they go through the hairpin. He wanted to make that move around the outside, but that's an almost impossible move. You have to be so much further ahead to go around the outside of the hairpin at Hockenheim, and he is getting a little bit frustrated because he knows he has to wait basically a whole nother lap to get another chance.
Caruana, I'm not sure how much experience Caruana has on platforms outside of iRacing. Commentated on him, or seen him in a decent number of series there, but showing his versatility and maybe in a car as well, that and a type of race that encourages the drivers to be able to switch a bit more easy. There's draft that's involved and keeps you a little bit closer. Caruana and Whitford maybe closer than they'd like, making contact and getting very squirrely in that final sector. But with 4 minutes to go, I believe that these drivers are running up on, is it 3 or 4 laps to go?
It'll be 3 laps to go with the time that Romanitas crossed the line. Laps are about 1:45 or so, so 3 laps to go for everybody in the field. It's going to be a 16-lap race. So keep that in your mind for when the next race comes around, because we'll actually have a number. Drivers will know that if it gets around to lap 15 or so, they've waited a little bit too long and they're going to need to start battling. And all these guys are definitely starting. You see Whitford in that orange Formula 4 car behind Matt Caruana in the gray in the draft, but it's a little bit of a double draft. He's not going to be able to peek to the inside.
We're actually up towards the front now. It's Lucas Muller who's up the inside of Von der Heide. Room given, move made as well as they funnel out into the Mercedes-Benz arena. I don't think there was really much of a fight put up there, and Romanitas has built up that advantage as they now cycle into the heavy braking zone before the left.
This is what Romanitas wants to see, the battle behind, but that was Muller making the move on Von der Heide, and they're still arguing as they go into this middle sector. It's switchbacks, it's left and then right. You're on the inside one corner, you're on the outside for another, and look at Dravosekov in fourth. He was behind this battle by about a second, just barely holding on to the draft, and suddenly one side-by-side moment, and he's back in it for the podium, back in it for potentially a top 5 start in the final tomorrow.
Who's going to be the most aggressive, though, of these drivers, knowing that the gap behind is big, but not big enough that a spin keeps them inside of the top 10. Let's not forget that there's still questions about whether race control will have something to say about not one, but two incidents for Nej in that 10th position. Could it be Lorenz and Baker that are fighting for the final spot in tomorrow's finals in this first semi-final action? The Gadachane Balish Esports driver of Drabasekov. I've talked about Door Esports. Balish Esports have also shown up in numbers as well. Like you said, was in danger of losing the draft earlier in this race, but has been able to bring it back down, and now, not the double, not the triple, the quadruple toe builds him towards the hairpin.
It's going to be a pretty big draft for Drabasekov, but does he want to go for the move this time? Will he be able to, or is he going to be forced to be in his familiar position here of just riding in third, maybe just like his country of origin, is being a little bit neutral in this battle, hanging back, seeing what's going on, or not. He's going full attack, and he punts Lucas Muller into the hairpin. Muller keeps it going, but Von der Heyde gets off the worst there.
I think Von der Heyde cycles back into third, but this, I think, is the danger with what we were talking about with moving the brake bias backwards. What does that do? Well, it means you have less of a chance of locking the fronts, but you slow down less efficiently. You take more distance to travel, but you're able to control the car laterally maybe a little bit better. It means if you miss your braking zone, what am I trying to say? In layman's terms, if you miss your braking zone, you may be going straight on.
Yeah, you're out of luck, we can say that much. But they got very, very lucky there. That wasn't an incident like we saw a little bit earlier with Max Pfeiffer getting turned around. Everybody was able to keep it pointed straight, everybody survived, but you can only get away with so many incidents like that, and if that happens again, I don't think they'll be getting away with it, so we'll see what Drabasekov takes away. Will he be a little bit more conservative next time around? He might have to be, because he's basically lost the draft of third and second again.
One final lap to cycle through then. Michael Romanidis is clear at the front. Still watching Kripner, Caruana, Whitvet for 5th, 6th and 7th. While behind them, I can tell you that Lorenz has been able to build up a bit of a gap to Baker for what might again be that final transfer into tomorrow's 30 minutes of action. I mentioned that we have about 30 minutes of fuel in this car, which means that, Joey, what was meant to be a 35-minute final like we've seen in some of the other tournaments, down to 30 for tomorrow.
Be high intensity, a little bit shorter. Got to make your moves when you can, but there was a possibility if you went a little bit longer than 30 minutes, you would have had to put fuel in the car, but that does not happen in Formula 4 racing in the real world, so we're going to go realistic, and it's a realistic battle with Von der Heyde and Muller still going at it. They're not scared by Drabasekov behind him. They're interlocking wheels coming into the flat-out left right-hander.
They may not realize it's the final lap of the race, apparently. Von der Heyde's back to second, but with Muller trying to squeeze on the inside. Outside switches back to inside, and as they fight for second, Romanidis breaks away at the front. Von der Heyde has still got the momentum, but around the outside, can Muller hang on into the final sector?
Into the stadium section, into turn 12 here. It's so hard to go side by side. It's so hard to stick it around the outside. But Von der Heyde in that gray, silver, and orange car, forced to back out of it. He's got to stay in third. And I think if Muller can hang on for 2 more corners, he's got second.
Well, it was fastest in the time attack qualifiers, fastest in qualifying, and then dominance in the race. Michael Romanidis barely breaks a sweat in the semi-finals of the 4th Prodigy Racing League tournament. This Formula 4 at Race Room, no match for Romanidis.
Wipe a couple of drops of sweat off the forehead, but not too much. He led from the very beginning, almost broke the draft on lap 1, got a little bit scared a little bit later as he was caught, but he didn't stress that much. He'll be stressing a lot more tomorrow, though, because, well, he'll be facing the winner of semi-final number 2, and everybody behind him once again.
We'll get the results up now as the drivers officially have all completed the race. It's Michael Romanidis, the race winner, but punching in all of that draft for those behind. Not the fastest lap. Instead, Lucas Muller second, Von der Heyde third with the fastest lap, and Drabasekov fourth to complete those drivers in that top 4 breakaway. Kripner in front of Caruana in the battle to the end, while Whitford, Mrak, and then Gerhard should all be somewhat safe in their spots in tomorrow's finals action. The question will remain as to those behind. Will Nej see race control intervene for not 1 but 2 penalties? Have to wait and see. Lorenz, Baker, Lofaro they may just miss out. Maybe one of them squeaks on through, but Parent, Farrant, Pfeiffer, and Colt, unfortunately, are done for this race room Formula 4 action. That is one semi-final done. Like Joey, I think, alluded to earlier, we've still got the second semi-final to come. We'll hopefully grab a chat with some of the drivers before we go racing once again, but a little bit more action and intensity at the front than I was kind of expecting, Joey, and kind of what I assumed we were going to see a little further back.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect that dive from Dravasekov into the hairpin. He was pretty safe in fourth. He didn't seem like the driver who was going to go for that dive, but he did. And I do wonder if he might run into some trouble with the stewards as well. He didn't take anybody out. He did end up being the loser in his own move, but he did make contact with Muller and Van der Heyde, so we'll see if he does survive to the final tomorrow. And we'll see if Nag survives the final tomorrow in that top 10. Lots of stewarding things to happen in the stewards room. Not on track, but because of what happened on track.
For those that were watching, they can judge relatively how many laps to expect, when they're going to need to really push it in the closing stages of the second semi-final. What else do you think they will have been watching? Do you think they will have noted some of the drivers really running that brake bias pretty rearwards and some of the mistakes that we saw as a result of that?
That seems to be what most of the drivers in the field are doing. We heard from some of the drivers before the race that they are moving it back a little bit so they can be a little bit more aggressive into the braking zone, so they can not turn and brake at the same time, because that's a fast key to a lockup, but you can be more aggressive. You can send it in a little bit deeper, but if you are battling with another driver, if you're a little bit too deep, that's where Collision Central comes in. That's how you can lose your P10 or lose your top 10 finish off of the track. I think everybody's going to be thinking, we can be a little bit more conservative. We don't need to make any contact, but we know we can definitely race.
Let's see if we can have a chat with semi-final 1 winner Michael Romanidis, and hopefully he's able to hear us and he's standing by to have a chat. Michael, a dominant performance from you in qualifying, one of 2 drivers to break into the 42s, and then also in that race itself. Talk us through your emotions now, just in a great spot heading into tomorrow's finals.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the result couldn't have been any better, obviously, with P1. Well, for tomorrow, it might be P2, all pole position, so we have to wait and see for semi-final 2. Yeah, not quite as dominant as it may have seemed. Yeah, in qualifying, had to pull out a pretty decent lap, about a 10th of my PB. I knew other people may have been a little bit quicker going into that quali, but of course, in the 10 minutes, managed to put in a semi-decent lap, I would say. And then in the race, probably proved a little bit crucial, as even though with the slipstream, I think Jan didn't want to go for a move really into any opportunities, which he had pretty much every lap into the hairpin. And then every half chance I saw to break the slipstream, I tried to take it, as you may have seen with all the weaving. But yeah, in the end, I think with a couple of moves towards the end of the race, maybe they saw that P2 would be the maximum for them. So yeah, I think I saw a couple of interesting moves into the hairpin towards the end, which ultimately made my last 2 laps, I think, a little bit more pleasant.
You've, of course, been a part of the first 2 iRacing Prodigy Racing League tournaments. What have you kind of learned from those experiences? What have you carried forward into this tournament on Race Room?
Not too much, to be honest. A lot of it is brand new for me, because this game I'm not really familiar with. So that's the biggest weakness, I would say. In terms of pure speed, I think I can be there on any game, but yeah, it's some details on every game that are a little bit different, especially with the quali procedures, the race procedures, and whatnot. The racing in general is a little bit different. And yeah, I would say that was not the best race for me, but it was thankfully enough. And yeah, let's see tomorrow. As you said, maybe 3rd time's the charm, but tried a couple of times now. Let's see if it works out tomorrow.
Well, if that wasn't your best, I can't wait to see what we can expect from you tomorrow, Michael. Congratulations on a almost flawless semi-final. We'll see you tomorrow for the final.
Thank you.
Always great to talk to Michael Romanidis from that Coanda Esports outfit. Joey, the drivers in that second semi-final are getting ready to roll for qualifying. A little bit worrying if Michael Romanidis said that A, that was maybe not as easy as it seemed, but B, that was also not him at his best.
Yeah, that's terrifying, but I think we're gonna have some terrifying drivers in this field as well. Some dominance, and remember, you said the splits were made by the sort of a zipper effect. The top 40 were split one. Number one went in split number one. Second place went in split number two. Then third, fourth, blah blah blah, so on. So we've got some of the top drivers in this split as well. Similar split of talent, and they're going to all blend together in that final. But we've got to find those 10 drivers who are going to advance. And once again, I can't predict who it's going to be. We didn't see the top 10 drivers in speed go forward because of incidents. Anything could happen, and it could get even crazier.
What we did see is, while there were some incidents and slight shuffling, 1, 2, 3 positions in either direction, we didn't see the big swings like we did see in our previous iRacing tournament, where some drivers were able to start towards the back and cycle up into a final spot. I feel like the car, the braking balance that we're talking about so much, the way this track is playing out into a race, it's not that easy to work your way on forward.
No, it's a little bit of a step up from the last event. We were kind of a level below on the racing ladder previously. It was the F1600 at Okayama, a short track, long straights. It was a little bit like a road course pack race mixed with a go-kart race. And this is one step forward. We're on the Formula 1 ladder with Formula 4. We're at a grade 1 track at Hockenheim. It's a little bit more of a normal race, so to speak, where it is much more difficult to move forward, but you never know what could happen. If you have a bad qualifying, we have one of the best drivers with a bad qualifying at the back of the field, we could very well see a great drive forward.
Just a reminder, if you're not watching us on the Racing Prodigy YouTube, head over there, subscribe. We've got 2 of the Prodigy Search Selection shows coming up, as Racing Prodigy, aligned with the sim racing community, is trying to build a pipeline to give those who maybe do not have the opportunities but are deserving of those opportunities step up. We are 51 days away from landing at the Atlanta Motorsports Park for the start of Prodigy Week, and today the 5th driver is going to be confirmed to be heading out there. As mentioned, qualifying 2 underway. I'm just looking at some of the times right now. You've got the likes of Marco Pajic, Alessandro Ottaviani that are rolling, but that's on the other side of a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with semi-final number 2.
What should you expect at Prodigy Week? Well, as a Prodigy Pass recipient, lots of seat time. We're going to put you on a skid pad, autocross course, kart track, on a sim using SimLab, Grid, and Asetek Sim Sports equipment. But most of your seat time will be in the Radical SR1 race car on the main track at Atlanta Motorsports Park. Now, you'll have a pro coach review onboard video and data. You'll work with PitFit Training, who trains IndyCar and NASCAR drivers. You'll work with Dr. Nick Molinaro, who helps pro athletes perform under pressure. You'll be interviewed, but don't worry, you'll get media training by DKC, and we're going to live stream it all on Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel, with behind-the-scenes look into how it all goes down. We're going to open it all up, share setup information, data, and more, because we're here to provide access and opportunity.
And that's a preview of what waits for the drivers that win a Prodigy Pass, that land at the Atlanta Motorsports Park. And of course, there are big plans into 2024, a second Prodigy Week. If that's the goal, is to have a second Prodigy Week with hopefully a Prodigy draft to select 50 racers from the Prodigy Week Parts 1 and 2 to head into a real-world racing series. These are the big goals of the Prodigy Racing League, and of course, the sim racing community is coming along for the ride. Pajic currently on top in qualifying, which is almost halfway through already. We ride around Hockenheim and cycle through turn number 1. The Mercedes AMG Petronas esports driver looks calm and focused, but that's every esports driver.
Pretty much, and before this event, we got information about every single driver. We got sort of their bios, we got their past. And Marco Pajic essentially has a book. He's like Elvis Costello. He wrote the book for us. And it all starts in the early days of sim racing. Remember I mentioned Grand Prix Legends before multiplayer sim racing even really existed. Well, this guy was on Grand Prix 3 on a PC, on a keyboard, just like me with F1 2013, and then slowly moved up from R Factor 1 to R Factor 2 to F1 Esports to ESL R1 to Rensport to Race Room here as well. It's been a full journey of sim racing. You can only imagine what kind of stories this guy has, and you can only imagine how many different physics models he's had to adapt to over the past 20 years.
He's a lovely person as well, just to chat with. I can tell you that myself, having had the pleasure of meeting him. Has competed in so many big series. I was talking about Muller earlier, and all the different platforms. You can basically do that with Marco as well, who's competed in, again, the Virtual Le Mans 24 Hours with so much success as well. ADAC GT Masters, to touch on Race Room for a second, that's where he used his speed, but not his equipment. He was when he was racing on a T300, a wobbly wheel stand, a single screen on a desk, where he was able to show some of his real potential, and Marco currently doing that in qualifying as well. Currently faster than what we saw in the first of the qualifying session, although having said that, we again have two drivers that have broken into the 142s.
Just for the record, I also compete in sim racing with a very wobbly wheel stand and a 24-inch single screen on my desk, so I'll be waiting for my call from Toto Wolff.
Yeah, we'll put you into a test against Marco and Jarno Ottmeier, and we'll see how you fare. How about that?
Only 3 seconds off the pace.
Here's Alessandro Ottaviani, the Veloce esports driver, another driver, FIA, WTCR Esports, ADAC GT Masters, so much on this platform that we've seen him do, and he's able to find some time, but not going to get in front of Marco Pejic. He's still half a tenth of a second away from the 42.885 that Pejic has been able to punch on in. I don't feel anyone is beating that.
No, I don't think so. I think he might have to wait until tomorrow to be beaten, but he's very, 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 very closely followed by the rest of the top four. Even down to the end of the top 17 is separated by 1 second. I think that's closer than in semifinal number 1. And even 18th and 19th, they're barely out of 1 second. It's 1.1 seconds separating the entire top 19 so far.
Already seen a couple of Door Esports drivers finish in the top 10 of semi-final 1. Here's Florian Haase to add to the contingent of blue and white. A quarter of a second or so off, 5th behind the likes of Mosen, Rosen, and Ottaviani. Here's Adam Pinches, who has competed in the Arnage pink and white colors on occasion in the past. He's about half a second off, and once again, you just see just how bouncy the outside of turn number 1 truly is. I want to touch on one driver who we saw in the Prodigy Search Selection Show, Connor Fisk, someone that, Joey, I know stood out to you in the driver bios that was submitted, someone that did DoorDash during their first year of college to pay for their sim rig, took that the next level the year after that, was a mechanic for their local race team to pay for their karting, someone that will do whatever they need to go racing.
And that's DoorDash in Utah, where they've got a couple of cities. You're gonna be driving miles and miles on the highway to be doing DoorDash in Utah. You're gonna be suffering through the desert. So he's done a lot to get here. So even if he doesn't make the top 10, we still owe all of our respects to Connor Fisk. And I hope everybody who ordered Red Robin and Dairy Queen from him gave him some very, very large tips for the pain he had to endure.
Joey is no longer welcome in the state of Utah. Here's Yuval Rosen, who shows that, again, you can have a wheel mounted on a desk with a monitor maybe slightly further away than what you'd have if you're on a sim ring, and you can be quick. He's only a tenth and a half currently off of Marco Pejic, and cycling through that final sector, he's trying to just bring as much speed out of the car as possible, but I think ran a bit wide and invalidated the lap time.
I think there may have been a slight issue there. He's not very happy with what happened there, and I think that will be qualifying coming to an end in about 30 seconds. An understandable driver at the top with Marco Pejic, but I see some of the drivers down at the bottom of the field who I think are definitely going to be moving forward. Gutsy in 13th place right now. Look for him in the top 10, and lots of progress to be made forward. 1.1 seconds for 18 cars. That's insane.
It is going to be another wild one. We did see breakaways, let's not forget, in that first race, but they did not come immediately. It did take a bit of time, as that qualifying session officially is now in the books. Unfortunately for Yuval Rosen, what happened there was technical issues. We'll see if he's going to be able to get that sorted in time to be able to join the field. But it is going to be Marco Pejic and then Alessandro Ottaviani on the front row. That is an experienced grid of esports drivers. Then Richard Marin, Alex Mosen, Florian Haase, Adam Pinches, Ivan Fornes, Kilian Gietz, and then Alexander Gronwald and Connor Fisk round out your top 10. There's Rosen, who I think is still trying to figure out what's going on. Can he get it fixed in time?
Setting
He's
up a
not
mobile
looking
hotspot.
Doesn't look too thrilled right now, that's for sure.
It looks like he's got his phone out to set up a mobile hotspot because it was a technical issue with his internet, I believe. So maybe he's going all out, or he's just chatting in Discord to tell people what's happening. But he's going all out. He wants to be here.
All of these drivers want to be here. They have fought their way in through the time attack qualifiers, where only the top 40 make it into the semi-finals, and now with 70 seconds to warm up before they build to a standing start, and another 25 minutes of racing. Boy, did that first one set the expectations high. 4-car breakaway at the very front, and given the margins in qualifying, I feel like we should touch on something that came into effect in the previous iRacing tournament, Joey. The position you finish in the race determines what row you start in the finals. However, which side of the row, aka if you start in front of the other driver on the row, is determined by who has the fastest lap during your race.
Exactly. It's mathematical. It's somewhat complicated, but it's something to consider. If you are even the race leader, can you set a faster lap than Michael Romanidis did in the previous race? If you're Marco Pajic and you are going to win this race, can you take pole instead of him? You do want that extra position because it's not like a rolling start where you are side by side directly. It doesn't necessarily matter that much if you're on the inside or the outside. These are staggered grid slots. It's the same grid you see in every standing start at Hockenheim from F1 on down. There's about 100 feet differentiating whether you're on the inside or the outside coming into turn 1.
And we saw in the last race that starting in second seemed to be a bit of a disadvantage on the dirtier side of the track potentially. And so again, just run you down through the starting grid as the drivers get ready to get themselves on the formation, focused up towards the lights. It's going to be Pajic from Ottaviani on the front row, Richard Marin, Alex Mosen, Florian Haase, Adam Pinches, Ivan Fornes, Kilian Guitz, Alexander Grunwald, Connor Fisk. That's the top 10. Those are the drivers that we believe should be in a relatively comfortable position. Daniel Parvan, Julian Fox, Leonard Goetze, Roland Bozo, Max Nares, Istvan Tietz, Nathan Saxon, and Farouk Udoe. And there are the drivers. We get a great look at them in their rigs and getting focused up. Different emotions, a thumbs up from some. Joey, they're ready to go.
They're all ready to go, and they know what time it is. It's Hock o'clock right about now. It's Hocken time. And they're preparing in all their own special ways. Some in VR, some with headsets, some using the generic Apple headphones like I am as well. It's Hock o'clock. Let's do it.
Semi-final 1 saw Michael Romanidis dominate. What do we have with 25 more minutes thrown up onto the board and the green flag in the air for semi-final 2 of this Prodigy Racing League Formula 4 tournament on Race Room. Great start once again inside of the top 3, but 3 wide for 4th. One driver runs out wide, but safely we cycle through. Marin, Haase, and Pinches. That's the order for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Onto the brakes for the first time of asking. Still 3 wide, this time for 5th position. This time it's chaos on the opening lap, and we're not even up to the hairpin.
3 by 3 down the back stretch now. They've resolved it just a little bit. 2 by 2 now, as Pinches does hang on to the top of the train. Mosen, Guit, Grunwald, Fornes, Parvan. They're all in the fight as well, and critically, even though they ran 3 wide for about the entire first sector, they're still in draft range of Florian Haase up ahead, of Marine up ahead. This could be a train all the way down the field if we don't lose some drivers to the hairpin as we almost did in the background.
And that was looking rearwards from Pinches, so they got through safely. This is that top 10 cutoff area. Of note, I do not see Rossell on that left side of the screen, and so I do. He's down in 12th position, was able to get it sorted in the nick of time, but definitely not where he would have wanted to be. This is the danger area, though, in effect, Joey, the top 10.
It is. It's a bubble. You see, I think that might have been Rosen almost getting into the wall on the exit of that large curve there of turn 11. But everybody's still clean. Everybody's still pointing forward. There's a lot of drama in those opening quarters, but it seems like everything's been resolved for now. Now we can start to get into the racing rhythm. Now we can start to get into maybe some separation and some packs. As I got jump scared there. That was not a real spin. Florian Haase is still very much pointed straight.
End of the opening lap. All 20 cars still only split by about 19 machines, I should say, split by about 6 or so seconds. So the draft is funneling through the field, but there's once again a chance of a top 4 breakaway if it plays out in the way that the leaders will want. I did see that in our Racing Prodigy YouTube chat, some of the Mazda Racing family are here to support Nathan Saxon, who's currently racing in the Spec MX-5 Challenge in the real world, with 12 years of iRacing experience that carried him there. Here's Connor Fisk, though. All those DoorDash hours, all those mechanic hours to be able to go karting, and now just outside of the top 10 and a chance of tomorrow's finals.
In the draft of Parvan, pulls to the inside, not late enough on the brakes, though, to make that move work. Gonna stay in P11 for the moment. Parvan's a little bit wide, little bit of contact made, and he's actually gonna make the move as Parvan goes around.
And that was unfortunate for Parvan, who drops down to the tail end. I think was able to gather it up, but not before slipping to 19th spot. Connor Fisk now the one with the magnifying glass from Race Control as Goetze swoops up and underneath, then through to the top 10.
Pair of orange cars doing battle. Fisk backs out, and then you do see Rosen in that white car right behind. Could the fall of Fisk be even further? Could he have some damage from that contact with Parvan that turned him around? It didn't seem like especially large contact, but you make one incident, they start to stack up very quickly.
And see them pushing the limits of the track on the exit of that very slippery final sector now. Out of the final corner with still Pejic, Ottaviani and Marin Haase split by only 1.2 seconds, and now 1.7 or so back to 5th position. It's starting to seem a little bit like deja vu up towards the front in terms of what we are seeing here. The thing now, if you're Connor Fisk, is you can't let what has happened dent your confidence too much, because Race Control will have their say. You just have to finish as best as you can.
Got to keep racing, still 21 minutes to go. You never know what can happen, but I think we know what's about to happen right now. You've got Yuval Rosen right behind Fisk. He's getting a double draft here from both Fisk and Goetze, and you know he's going to be aggressive. He had a scare before the race even started with some technical issues. He got back in the session just in time, and he is getting aggressive around the outside in the hairpin. He's going to outbrake Fisk around the outside, but he's too late. He's going to have to switch it back and try and get the run on exit. Interlocking wheels, and I think he's just about made it work. Still side by side, but he's going to have the inside coming into turn 9.
Oh, beautifully done. That's respect shown on both sides as well to allow that move to play out nicely. And the swap around happens, and Rosen puts the technical issues behind, and now almost gets tagged from behind. But onto the anchors just in the nick of time for Fisk. Did see Ottaviani and Marin swapping around for second. Marco Pejic has started to build a bit of a buffer at the front as Fisk gets very wild and loose with the exit curve. Just runs himself that little bit too far beyond the racing surface. Goetze, by the way, in his notes to us, Joey, called himself the personification of a Monaco merchant. Now, I think that means that he needs to get a few more sims that have Monaco on them, because he feels confident that if we go there, he's up towards the front.
You never know if the Prodigy committee's thinking about that. Could we have the Monaco Masters in the future? You never know. We've got so many simulators. We've got so many drivers who would love to race at Monaco. I'm here for it. Monaco Masters 2024. That's my endorsement right there.
Joey just wants the chaos. That's really what I'm feeling right now. Turn 2, Rosen trying to set up this long run. You can see Goetze trying to get on the power earlier. That carried him a bit wide and now tightens the left-hand cut back onto the straightaway. Rosen's in the draft. Now starting to build upwards of 200 kilometers an hour as we build up the revs in through 5th gear. Still only at 5,500 RPM. It's not like these are screaming beasts of engines. Rosen gonna back out of this one now. As you see, a little bit more squirrely up in front. They are starting to trip over one another. Grunwald, Pinches, and Guich in the middle of all this as they head up towards the 2nd sector. They're starting to lose track of those in front.
It's getting crazy, but that is Pinches at the head of the train, Guit behind in that gray and teal car, and then Grunwald 3rd in line. Hard to differentiate some cars sometimes, but these are very, very easy to line up next to each other. Pinches in the head of the train. He's good. He survived. He survived the middle sector. That was intense stuff. He's good for a couple more corners until we get onto the front stretch again.
Another look at some of those webcams, and Interesting to see some of the distractions behind the sim racers. We got some LED disco themed things going on there. It does seem a little bit dark though, so clearly some drivers who like to have a little bit of darkness when they go racing find the environment that works for them. As we head to the line to complete the 4th lap of racing, 5th lap underway for Marco Pajic at the front. The gap is now half a second between him and Ottaviani. I think those top 4 are now all a little bit more separated out than anything that we saw from the top 4 in semi-final 1.
There's been some nice stratification up front. That's going to be good news for all those drivers. It might not be good news for their enjoyment right now. They're probably pretty frustrated that they're not able to move forward, but if they can all stay safe and maybe not make contact like we saw in the previous race in the top 4, they should be all good. But it's kicking off again here a little bit further back. Grunwald still going at it into the hairpin. Killian on the inside later on the brakes, though. He's able to hang on, but more coming in. That's Fornes. He's going to join a 5th car in this battle now.
I think we saw also a bit of a half send from Rosen on Götze once again, so they are starting to dice a bit more, and they're in danger of each losing track of the groups in front. For Rosen, Götze and Fisk, they are 2 seconds back from this train that we're watching right now. You can see visibly just a short blast, and there's 3 distinct battle packs that we have right now. Fornes tucked in behind. Take a look at the Spaniard who's doing the classic sim racer lean.
He is. It adds a couple of extra tenths if you pretend. You never know. And he's got the wood wall behind him as well. He's combining technology and the rustic background. He's straight out of a home economics magazine. Put him in Better Homes and Gardens for that. But he's looking forward. He's moved forward, and he's kind of the surprise addition to this battle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him up in P6 before too long. He is chasing down Grunwald and Guit, and even Pinches if he can get by these guys.
Yeah, so many manufacturers now have, supported esports programs and tournaments. Fornes has been competing in the Lamborghini Esports Real Race competition, where he was a finalist on Assetto Corsa Competizione, so was apparently not far, had a chance to be pretty close to being a charging bull. We'll see how much of the bull he'll break out tomorrow in the finals. Don't think we'll see the elbows out too aggressively for these drivers so much. Although, having said that, Grunwald swaps back underneath, doesn't dive deep under the brakes, but releases them just enough to slip on past the fellow Formula Ford. But now the fight back off the corner, they continue to fight to lose each other more time.
Yeah, Adam Pinches is running away right now. He's going to be fighting for 5th before too long. But these guys still side by side here into turn 8. It's very, very tight through there, but Grunwald makes it work around the outside. He does get clear of Guit. He's up ahead into P7 right now, but I think we might see Killian in the draft again as he peeked to the inside of turn 11. No, he doesn't. He's got to stay behind.
Figures things out for the time being. Leonard Götze is up 4 positions so far in this race, amongst some of the bigger movers that we've seen in semi-final action to have worked forward from outside of finals contention into a qualification spot. There's still 15 odd minutes to go, and these drivers are going to be caught, you'd think, by the 3 behind that just continue to get closer and closer, heading off to the line once again. I feel like the fact that we have a 30-minute race rather than 35 minutes, Joey, means, like you said, in the gap between the 2 semi-finals, shorter race, less time to make moves, but it also means less unknown, because tires maybe aren't such a consideration in this Formula 4 as Rosen tries to build up to get past Götze, but they are going to have 5 more minutes left to run rather than 10. Makes it a little bit easier.
You're going to be going a little bit longer, though. You're going to be wearing the tires a little bit more. You're going to be feeling the pressure a little bit more, even though it is just a sprint race of 30 minutes. So you might not be adding the full 10 minutes, but you do still have to add a little bit of extra time to keep that focus, stay in the zone. Rosen's in the zone, into the hairpin. Little bit of a lockup on the inside, but doesn't matter too much. A little bit of a hip check to Götze on the outside, but Rosen's in shape right now. He's got the inside of the flat out turn 7. But it's not over. Götze's going to be on the inside into the stadium section.
He's got a great view to the fans of the Sen from the inside to hold on to the position. Connor Fisk not going to try and get back underneath Rosen through this little battle. All that's done is drag them a couple more tenths off the 3 that they were chasing down. It's great to be able to see this sort of fighting right now, but with, of course, Connor Fisk already in race control's eye, Rosen will maybe not be too concerned from behind. It'll be full focus in front. Another half look to the inside, and pressure fell. Goetze runs wide. Door left open. Rosen up into the top 10.
Whoa, little bit of contact through the final sector. This is not a place you want to go side by side, but Rosen and Goetze are making it work. And Goetze does get that position back against all odds. Well done, well fought back. And Rosen's got deja vu now. He's got to do the same thing over again, likely on the back straight.
You can just see how squirrely, how uncomfortable it must be in those cars as they hit the floor, hit the curb, running out wide out through turn number 1. Once again, trying to just tuck tight out of turn 2. This time, Rosen not getting as good a run. He's not as close onto the back of Goetze as he was a lap ago, but once again with the draft, Fisk even closer as well. It's going to be a slingshot to the inside. We saw a big pinch under braking from Rosen last time, and Goetze's not going to give him the chance. He'll pinch, and a little bit deeper into the braking zone. We'll try and hold the outside.
I think there may have been a little bit of contact further ahead as well. Mosen has fallen down the order with Florian Haase. I think they may have gotten into each other as Goetze and Rosen have resolved things here for just a moment. It's not going to be a long moment. Things are starting to break up in the top 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Mosen, Marin have been joined by Haase and Pinches in what could now be a rather interesting fight for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rows in tomorrow's starting grid for the finals. Let's not forget the finishing position today in a semi-final dictates which row you will start on tomorrow's racing. 12 minutes though left to run at the front. This is that little gaggle that we were mentioning. Ottaviani and Pajic have just now 1 and 2 to squabble amongst themselves, but it's 4 for 3rd on back.
You have to wonder, is there a little bit of damage, whether it's to the Pride, whether it's to the cars for Mosen and Haase? Could they maybe continue to fall? Could this just be the start of maybe even falling out of the top 10 for drivers who seemed absolutely destined to be starting in the top 10 on the grid? They've got 10 more minutes to resolve that, but this battle still refuses to be resolved. I don't think it'll ever be resolved. I think we're going to see these guys side by side for probably the next 10 minutes, because every single lap, it's Rosen gets by, Goetze gets back by, and Connor Fisk is just along for the ride as we get the perfect on board to watch what's about to happen for the 3rd lap in a row.
Yeah, Connor Fisk is operating as our camera operator for today's action as we look forward at those in front. Rosen still very much on the wheel to the inside, trying to get alongside. Definitely some contact between the two. Goetze swoops back to the outside, trying to open up the entry into the corner, but Rosen tries to run him out of room, out of the hairpin once again. It's a drag race. Rosen's got a bit more momentum, and a car slow in front.
The 81, I believe, trying to get out of the way. Some heavy damage. I think that's a lapped car, though. So no, it's Grunwald. That's Grunwald from the top 10. Heavy suspension damage. He's out.
And so something happened in that second gaggle. Mosen, Haase, Marin, Pinches that has seen Grunwald drop out of a final spot and down to the pit lane with 10 minutes to go.
Arvan's out as well. He was out a little bit earlier, though, I think. And that's bad luck. We didn't see many actual DNFs in semifinal number 1. We saw some contact, we saw some incidents, but we didn't see much in terms of race-ending damage. So that must have been a very, very big incident to take Grunwald out of things. And now suddenly, Rosen and Goetze are both safe in the top 10, and Connor Fisk might have to start getting a little bit more aggressive to at least get P10 on the track for the moment.
Again, on track, I think that's the important distinction. What will race control have to say about the moment that we had in the early stages? Bit sideways out of the opening corner, lost some momentum, and I think under pressure potentially from Bozo on the outside, who definitely is trying to commit and pinch. Fisk swoops out wide and brings the car back under control, but with momentum lost, and now trying to defend from not just Bozo but Tatuus as well.
Yeah, this is about to get tough for Connor Fisk because he's got 2 people behind him who are hungry to get by him. And he's got a little bit of damage on the car, a little bit slower in a straight line, and we might just be 3 wide to the hairpin as here comes Istvan Tatuus in that gray and white and blue car. Fisk later on the brakes, but there's the switch back from Bozo.
Beautifully executed, but is it going to give the position come the next corner, trying to clear himself, and now Bozo finally able to do so. Fisk down to 12th, and if Tatuus can get to the inside, he might be able to make the pain even worse. Not going to be able to get the move done just yet. The slide back for Connor Fisk at least prevented for the time being. Roland Bozo, by the way, in terms of notes, said that has only been sim racing a couple of years, mostly in touring cars, so a bit out of his comfort zone, is a bit sideways there. And you can't use the right foot to save a Formula 4 like you can a touring car. Also says he does some amateur autocross in the real world. Really interesting to see where these drivers find their hobbies bringing them.
The old parking lots of Hungary, they're doing some good autocross over there. I've done a little bit of autocross in the US here, and it's certainly a stepping point to get into real racing. It's not necessarily racing, so to speak. It's just a time trial, driving through cones in a parking lot. But if you want to get some real experience behind the wheel of a car, controlling a real vehicle instead of just a simulated vehicle, we do see a lot of drivers using autocross as sort of a training ground to combine with sim racing to get into a real racing career.
It's one of those places as well where you have less emphasis on the wheel-to-wheel, so you have more emphasis on car control and making sure that you're making the most out of it. Here's going to be potentially at least 2 wide, if not 3 abreast, in towards the hairpin. Guit's got the lead with Fornes, and now Rosen tucked up behind. Goats are in the mix as well. Fornes gets pushed wide, escorted off the track. That was a little bit rude.
Just a little bit, and you do have to think about incident points here. There is an incident limit, but it is fairly high. It's 30 incident points that gets you kicked out of the race. Incident points are fairly similar to some other simulators you may be aware of. You get 1 incident point for going off the track, 4 for car contact, and 2 for loss of control. It's going to be very, very hard for anybody to reach 30 incident points, but if you are abusing the track limits a little bit too much, you do have to think about that number.
Absolutely, and it's why I called out in semi-final 1 that there were a lot of invalid lap times that we saw. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Just a reminder as well that these drivers do have a bit of pressure to make sure they have the fastest race lap that they can, because again, finishing position dictates which row you start on for the final, but which position on the row, either in front or behind, is determined by which semi-final driver on the row had the fastest race lap. So it means a bit of work for our stewards to go and tot up the numbers and order the grid, but emphasis for the drivers to get the most out of the race, not just in positions, but lap time as well.
Hope that you can get a little bit of a draft potentially. Hope that you can get some of the quadruple drafts that we can see in the trains here. Like if you are Goodsey, for example, at the back of this train, you're getting a quadruple draft coming into the hairpin, and you're going to be very, very quick so you can keep it on the road. Fastest lap right now is a 1:43.3. That came from the leaders, but if some of these guys can get an absolutely triumphant draft, they could be up there as well, and that's going to help a lot when you're starting deeper in the field.
The outside once again, long way around, but maybe a better place to get some momentum on corner exit, or a great place to get a bit of a switchback as Fornes tries. Drama behind. Rosen's had an issue out of the top 10. Connor Fisk has gone on through. Bozo and Tatuus are now 11th and 12th positions. 5 minutes to go. The top 10 still in flux.
Fisk and Bozo, Fisk back up into the top 10 for the moment. Bozo trying to switch it back. Look at Tatuus as well. Suddenly, one of these guys is going to advance instead of this being a battle for 11th, because Rosen is not entirely out of it. He's still about a second back, but might have damage, might be struggling right now. And suddenly, Connor Fisk has the ultimate pressure on him to try and hold off the 2 Hungarians.
There's action everywhere, and it bodes well for tomorrow's final. Remember, 1 p.m. Eastern, join us for the 30 minutes of action that we will have, not 35 as we've had for a couple of our other previous tournament finals. It is 30 minutes to account for the reduced fuel capacity of these cars. Connor Fisk runs a little bit wider through that final corner as Bozo tries to go tighter, gives the momentum to the American heading off towards the line. Remember, we still don't know what race control has to say. Connor Fisk has got to fight as though he is in a final spot right now. Bozo, Tatuus, and Rosen, the 3 that are trying to rip it away.
I'm looking at my timing screen right now. If you look throughout the entire field, all the drivers who are still out on track right now, all 17, only 6 of them did valid laps the previous time around. They're all playing with those incident points. They know they have a buffer. They know they can run off a little bit more and still be within the limit of the rules. It's the final 3 minutes. You've got to invent a new Hockenheim, basically.
You can see Hasa and Pinches swapping around constantly for third, but the focus must be here, just outside of the top 10, where Bozo's still working. Oh. Here comes Teets up the inside, swoops past Bozo after the contact, and now 6 positions gained. Can Teets get that 1 extra spot and slide into the finals?
There's 2 drivers who we haven't really talked about in the battle now. Nathan Saxon, the Mazda Master, and Fox as well. They're all in this. It's a 5-car battle for 1 spot. It's a 6-car battle for 1 spot. Connor Fisk does hold on there, but there was a ton of contact behind. That tells you how aggressive all these guys are going to be as we take 2 laps to go at the line.
There is no holds barred right now. It is everything on the line. No prizes today either. It is just about getting into the final, giving yourself a chance to be able to fight for the Prodigy Pass, that the winner will receive a trip to the Atlanta Motorsports Park to showcase their talent in the real world, not just behind the wheel of the car, but they'll be tested in terms of their fitness, their mental capacity, and all those things that the racing drivers need. Teets makes a little bit of a mistake, slides wide, drops to 12th spot in front of Nathan Saxon for the time being, but it's now once again Rosen that's on the offense with the top 10 in his sights.
It's going to become very, very hard for these guys now as they spent a lot of time battling for 11th and 12th and 13th through that final sector. They didn't spend a lot of time battling for 10th. Connor Fisk is pulling away. He's got a buffer that's basically the entirety of the draft range back to Rosen. Rosen's not going to be close enough to go for a dive into the hairpin. He's going to have to wait for the final sector and hope that he can get 1 more shot in the final corners.
We're going to get 2 laps to go, including the one that we are on. Marco Page and Ottaviani still 1 and 2, not forcing each other, just running the lap times that they need to do to be starting inside the front 2 rows in tomorrow's action. Into the hairpin, inside of the top 10. No switch arounds this time by. It's all about the build, all about the setup for that very final lap, where you ideally don't want to be the car at the very front of the order. You want to be the car maybe 2nd or 3rd in line. The car getting the slingshot into the braking zones.
That's what you would want, but if you are Connor Fisk, you're happy right now. You've got a little bit of a buffer. You've still got 0.5 of a second now, 0.6 of a second now as they exit onto this short straight parallel with the drag strip. Rosen's not closing up enough. He needs to get closer. He needs a fantastic run through the 3rd sector here. Maybe be within about 0.4 of Connor Fisk if he really wants a shot into the hairpin on the final lap here.
1 final lap for them to go after the technical issue for Yuval Rosen, able to put it behind him as 1 more lap. 1 more trip around Hockenheim to try and get on merit into the top 10. We'll have to wait to see what race control has to say come the end of this one. Fisk tries to break the draft. Not sure if I'd do that in a short run in towards turn number 1. Aggressively through that opening corner. Look how much they're trying to push.
They've scraped the entire floor off of these cars with the amount of sparks we're seeing, but Rosen is close enough. He has closed that gap down through the 3rd sector, and he's going to have a fantastic chance here. Even with that little bobble, he's going to have the full effect of the draft here, down the back straight, and he is going to go for a dive into the hairpin. I can guarantee you that much, no matter how far back he is, whether it's the inside or the outside, Rosen's about to throw it all at Connor Fisk.
Is he going to have to come from another postal code? Is he going to force Fisk into a mistake? It's a tight line from the American into the hairpin, who runs wide, misses the apex. Rosen gets the elbows forced out wide, and now maybe with a broken car. Teets comes on through, Saxon as well. There's
Fisk has been disqualified.
Frustration all around.
Connor Fisk has been disqualified. He's reached the incident limit, I think, with that contact. He's out of the top 10. Teets is suddenly the last car in the top 10 with Rosen's damage.
Incredible stuff. And you know what? While that's all been happening, Marco Page, Alessandro Ottaviani, as calm as you'd like at the front. Semi-final 2 sees 2 drivers with a calm, trouble-free race advance on forward to tomorrow's final of the Prodigy Racing League Formula 4 tournament on Race Room. Marco Page matches up with Michael Romanidis pole position, and then a flawless victory from there. The drama's not done and dusted just yet though. A drag race to the line, but Esteban Teets does enough to hold on to a top 10 finish.
You're gonna have to remind me where Esteban Teets started, but I'm pretty sure he started all the way at the back of the field in 18th or 19th. What a drive forward for him to advance here against all odds.
Incredible stuff. 7 positions gained. there's the unofficial race results, we should say, because Race Control has not had their say just yet. Page, the race winner, and with the fastest lap, that is likely to see him grab the pole position for tomorrow's final. We'll get confirmation for you come 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow when we go live for the final. Ottaviani, Haase, Pinches, Mosen, Marin, Fornes, Guit, Goetze, and then Tietz, the top 10. They should all have done enough to be in tomorrow's fight, to be a part of the battle for a Prodigy pass. We'll hopefully grab a word with Marco Page in a few moments' time, but Joey, another 2 semi-finals done. We've got our breaths, we've got our voices, fortunately, but if that second semi-final was anything to go by, boy, is tomorrow going to be something.
You can speak for yourself, Arjuna. I've already lost my voice. But it's going to be incredible tomorrow because it's a similar dynamic to what we saw in the previous event. It's a dominant driver in semifinal 1 who wins the race. It's a dominant winner in semifinal number 2. And now suddenly, it's dominance versus dominance. It's a clash of the titans. Somebody's got to be the best of the best of the best. And that is where drama happens. And that's where we'll more than likely see a lot of drivers who weren't necessarily fighting for the win tonight suddenly feeling more of the pressure, getting more aggressive, and they're going to be in the battle for the win as well. It's anybody's chance in the top 20.
Well, I tell you what, Marco Page has had a pretty busy week, I'm sure, preparing for another round of ESL R1 the past couple of days, and now today making sure he was ready to go for the semi-final action. Let's chat with semi-final 2 winner and see if we can learn a little bit more about what happened up there towards the front. Marco, congratulations on semi-final 2 victory. We were watching a lot of fighting further back in the field. It looked a lot calmer for you up towards the front.
Yeah. I wouldn't say calm, because Ottaviani was pushing me all the way. He really made me sweat, so I really needed to work for it. But yeah, it was just about enough. We were always trading lap times, it was always in my slipstream, so it was tough. But yeah, I managed to get the win.
I just mentioned for the viewers that you had some ESL R1 competition in the past couple of days that you've been preparing hard for as well. For those that maybe are not so into the world of sim racing or maybe new to our world, talk to them about the challenges of preparing for 2 competitions at a high level on 2 very different sims and 2 very different cars.
Oh, it's very difficult because you need to adapt. Every sim is different, so you need to adapt to what the sim needs you to do. Like, tire models are different, and the way you're driving, also completely different cars. F4 compared to GT3 cars, so you really need to reset every single time you jump into another sim. And but I think it's a good trait to have, to be able to adapt to different cars, which is my goal. And I made it work today, and hopefully tomorrow as well.
What do you think you're going to need to be able to do tomorrow to win that Prodigy pass? You'll be on the front row with Michael Romanidis, plenty of strong drivers, but we haven't really seen too much fighting up towards the front just yet.
Yeah, I think most of the drivers just took it easy. We know that you can't really break away with these close gaps at the front. As long as you're within half a second, you'll get a slipstream. So it's very tough to break away, especially when everyone is within a couple of hundreds. And yeah, it's going to be tough tomorrow. It's going to be decided on the final lap, I think. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I like the sound of that as well. Settled on the final lap. Marco, congratulations on a great semi-final performance. We'll see you tomorrow for the finals.
Thank you very much.
Always great to chat with the Mercedes-AMG Petronas esports driver Marco Page. And Joey, he said it wasn't calm. Michael Romanidis said the very same thing. And I think both will make a claim that today we did not see the best from the both of them. However, tomorrow, when we battle out there for 30 minutes, the Prodigy pass on the line for just one driver, hopefully they show up with the best they've got to give.
And only hope, and we don't even have to hope. We know that they will. I can probably imagine that both of those drivers are going to be doing some extra practice in the next 24 hours, make sure they're absolutely in the zone, and making sure that when they get to tomorrow, they don't crumble under the pressure now that everybody's together, and it's one of them too. I think they both want it to be them, but they don't want anybody else to break up that battle. They want it to be Titan versus Titan, Romanidis versus Page. That's probably not going to happen, though. We're going to have some surprises.
The other thing just to remember is even though we only took 20 drivers today to tomorrow's final, the top 500 from the Time Attack qualifiers get a second chance through the Prodigy search selection. We'll have another committee come together for the iRacing tournament that we just ran with the Formula 1600. A second search committee comes together for this race room tournament and the tournament on R Factor, which is underway right now. You can enter for free by going to racingprodigy.com. Even if you're not going to be the fastest on that sim, Joey, it's a great chance to show the judges what you're all about and to impress them some other ways.
It's always worth a shot. You never know if you're going to make it if you don't give it a shot. So even if you don't think you're the top of the top or even top 20, you might just be good enough. You might surprise yourself. It's always worth a shot. So go up there. I'm sure the link is up there or down there or over there or somewhere, but you'll find it.
Just don't click on my face. That's okay.
Yeah, don't do that.
For now, it's time to say goodbye, but don't forget, 1 p.m. Eastern, we return to the same places, RaceBot TV, Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel, and to the Race Room channels for the finals of this Race Room Prodigy Racing League tournament. The Hockenheim Formula 4 with Formula 4 has already delivered so much action, and tomorrow will be no different. Don't forget to stay connected to the latest comings and goings in the build-up to Prodigy Week. Make sure to follow Racing Prodigy across of social media. Final Prodigy passes for the first Prodigy week are being handed out in the next couple of weeks. For the entire team behind the scenes, for everyone at RaceBot, for Connery Maddock on production, for Joey Tebben, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow to send another driver to the Atlanta Motorsports Park to show what sim racers can do in the real world.